In this video, I'm going to set up a new locomotive with sound on my model railway in N gauge. How hard's that going to be? Okay, so the postman's come. It's very exciting. I've been waiting for this for a few days, so let's just have a look and see what's inside. As usual, there's an invoice. And there is also, what's everything? There's a Zimo decoder, Zimo sound decoder. There we go. It says ideal for Graham Farish and Apple DCC ready next 18 models. So next 18, as I understand it, is the type of connector. I suppose it's probably got 18 pins, and I think this is the connector here. It's extremely small. Anyway, this wasn't cheap. There we go, 100 quid. But it's a sound decoder. It should just plug straight in. So to the locomotive, I'm going to put it in. So a bit less faffing around. And it's been sold to me by YouChoos. And the point here is they have blown it, I believe is the phrase, but basically means they've loaded some sounds onto it. And the sounds are for an 8F. There we go, certificate. This so it's a YouChoos sound, and it's of an 8F. So I've gone and got myself. Well, I'll show you what I got myself in order to put this decoder into. So here we've got my present to myself. It was my birthday vaguely recently. This is an LMS 8F, number 8035. This is a new release from Graham Farish. There we go. And I'm pretty excited. Now, I'm a little bit worried about this because it's recommended that you don't go tighter than a second radius curve. I've got first radius curves on my layout. So obviously, being sensible, I thought, oh, never mind, I'll buy it anyway. So first thing I need to do is to see if I can get it to go around the curve. I suppose obviously the advice not to have too tight a curve is sort of, sensible. A bit silly really ignoring it, but never mind. That's what I'm like really. I don't like to be told I can't do things. Let's just do them anyway. So there's a lot of packaging on this. There we go, and how well that shows in the camera. So for the purpose of having a look and doing a review, I will take it out. Oops. There we go. Crash bang wallet, breaking it already. I'm very good at dropping my locomotives off my layout, and when I do, they fall all the way to the floor and crash bang well up on the floor. So it's not so good. Let me just put it on this piece of paper. Perhaps we can have a better look. There's some incredibly fine detail on here, particularly the handrails and some of the pipes and so on. So it's a 280. It's these four sets of pairs of driving wheels that I'm worried is going to struggle to get around the corner. Although I have worked out actually these wheels they're a bit smaller than, for example, on a 460 or 462 Atlantic or Pacific, typically, and that means that actually that length length of the driving wheels is about comparable to a 460 or 462. So let me just show you that. I've got my Jubilee here. And if we have a look, so what I'm saying is that length there is about the same as that length there. So perhaps I can expect it to cope with the curves in a similar way. So if we have a look, it's got traction tyres on the back wheels there. Not my favourite, but that's the way it is. So I assume that means the engine's in the front and the wizardry's in the tender. If I have a look, there are in fact two pairs, that's 4 wires going front to back across the tender, and a drawbar. So presumably those cables are 2 from the front pickups going to the back, and then 2 going from the back to power the motor, which I assume means that the decoder is supposed to go in the back there. So a little bit later, once I've read the instructions, I assume I can take the lid off the tender, and I should be able to just plug in this decoder that I've got. It's got a built-in speaker as well. I don't know where that is, but I assume it's also in the tender. That would make sense. Otherwise, there had to be a wire going across. And I think that's it. I don't think it's got any sort of lights or anything magical like that. I think on these N-gauge locomotives, everything's so incredibly fine anyway. You struggle to get these extra features in. I can see the detail on this is going to be so hard not to damage. So there's these grab rails along the side, just here on the tender, and there's all this detail in here as well, and the valve gear as well. I suppose it's the same as everything else, isn't it? But it does look incredibly fine. We've got these tiny little pipes just here under the valves. It does come with a few extra little bits. Not quite sure what they are. I think they're cab doors to stop your little man falling out when he's in there. But as I understand that, you should only put those on for static display. You can see if you go around the corner there, that's going to crash. I can see actually the tender's very tight, very close to the locomotive. So I can see getting around a tight corner is going to be difficult there. So if I compare that to the Royal Scot I've got here, you see that? That's a lot happier, going around a tight corner. So we'll have to see. If it can't go around the track, then it'll be straight on eBay, I'm afraid. Someone will get a bargain. Right, so the next thing is to try and get the decoder installed. Okay, so the first task is to remove the cover for the tender. Now apparently this is just held on by friction. Obviously this model's extremely delicate. There's a lot of details on it because it's brand new. Nothing's been broken off yet. So I hesitate to see where to hold it. It's got 2 handrails on the front and back of the tender, so I'll need to avoid those. And I think if I just grip it on the sides there, and possibly on the by the middle wheel here on the tender, and just very gently, so I'll give it a go at the back, help, there we go, it's a bit of movement, and it's popped off, there we go. Really don't want to break the model before I've even got it running. But this is the way of these things, I think. Now, so here there's a couple of circuit boards. And I think there's a speaker underneath. Let me find something to point with. So, I think just under here, that's the built-in speaker. Now here, there's two circuit boards, and I believe this one's the blanking plate. So I'm going to try and remove that without breaking anything. I'll just hold on to the one underneath. It's moved a bit. Okay, it just pops out. Okay, so it's worth having a look at. So this board here is obviously just holding the socket really and the solder connections. The socket's extremely fine. I suppose this is the next 18 standard socket. And I think the connectors are on either side. And in fact, if we look at the blanking plates, you can see the contacts are on those sides there. But I think there's a good solid rectangular sort of plug that sits in the middle, and that'll keep it all aligned. I don't think it's difficult to line it up, or I don't think you can sort of plug it in the wrong way or anything. I suppose you could plug it in the wrong way round, and that would obviously not be good. But if you did, then the blanking plate would be sticking out the wrong way. I can see here on the blanking plate the pins are numbered. It says 1, 9, 10 and 18. So I assume this is the same. In fact, on the board here, it says 1 against that pin, and it says 10 against that one. So 1, 9, 10, 18. So that's probably worth checking before I plug anything in. Here I've got my decoder in the box, packaging that it comes in. Take that out, and it seems to be glued. Ooh. It's got this sort of gooey, oh I see, sort of gooey gummy glue. It's got two sides. There seems to be electronics on both sides, and it's also got 1, 2, 3, 4. It's got 5 solder pads there. I think if you wanted to solder something on, I think you'd be pretty crazy to want to solder something onto this. I think I'd take a soldering iron to it, but maybe some people do that. I'd have to look up what they're for. Perhaps you can attach lights or functions or something. Come back to that. Anyway, to install it, I'm just going to line up. Let me check the numbers and the pin numbers. Now I can't see anywhere there a reference to a pin number, which is a bit disappointing. But it's only going to fit in a locomotive one way round. If I try and plug it in that way round, it'll stick out the back. So it's going to have to go in this way. And it does seem to fit. I mean, I think it's going to fit within the tender. And if I just wiggle it around, it's found its way sort of into that place. So I just assume it's all lined up. I'm just going to push it down a bit. There we go. A nice satisfying clunk. There. And that feels nicely fitted down. So here I've got the locomotive on my programming track. You can see the programming track is just a short piece of track attached to a piece of wood, and the droppers from it just here, they go to a dew point connector, so I can easily unplug it and just attach it wherever I want it. So let me get the camera set up, and I will try and do some programming. So to set my address of my locomotive, I press program. It goes into programming mode. There's several different ways of doing it, but for doing things on the programming track, I use PG. And if I press this button here, I can set the 4-digit address. I'm going to set it to the address of the locomotive, so that's 80, and I can change it 135. So when I press enter, it will set the address of anything on the programming track to 8035. And there were 3 sort of clicks coming from the locomotive, and you saw there on the display it said writing, and I believe that's worked. So now I've got the locomotive on the main track, and if I select this controller here and set it to use locomotive 8035, confirm that by pressing the loco button. So now if I twiddle the knob here, it will hopefully start to move the locomotive. Let's have a look. And it started moving. See if I can bring it back. It's now in reverse. And it's coming backwards. Right, well I'm happy that it runs. So I suppose the only thing I have to do now is to just pop the tender lid back on. Now this is the, I'm not anxious, I'm sure it'll fit, but this is the bit where you get anxious about whether it's going to fit on or not. Just to show you, I'm being incredibly careful. There's this detail here at the back I could very easily snap off. So I've just got to be really careful to avoid that. I think that's reasonably well lined up. Again, we got the handles at the back and the front there, so I'm just going to push from the middle really. Try and get it lined up. I think that's right. That looks good. Okay, so it seems to work, which is a good start. Next thing is to see if I can get it to make some sounds. I believe I have to press some of the function buttons to make that happen. The first one turns sound on, so let's give that a go. Oh, and that is making some noise. There's a whistle. Sounds good. We'll try some of the other sounds. Alright, so that's putting coal in the oven. Oh, that's a longer whistle, I think. Okay. That's a shame, it's stopped. Bit of dirty track, I think. Oh dear. Just as it was starting to get going, it stopped. I've got to say, it's very good at slow speeds. I mean, that's speed step 10. Let me try and turn it down even more. Well, look at that, we get a sort of braking sound as we slow down. There we go, that's crawling along at speed step 1. Bring it back again. So the 8F, obviously F for freight. We expect it to be pulling wagons more than coaches, and so I'd expect it to be good at slow speeds. It's not a shunter, but still, it's not an express either. But that's very smooth, that's very nice at slow speed. I haven't fiddled with any of the decoder settings. This is just as it came from YouChoos. In particular, it seems to have sort of inertial acceleration set on the decoder. I'll need to turn that off in order to get iTrain to drive it the way it wants to. There's one more test I need to run. I need to see how many coaches it can pull up the incline that leads out of my staging yard. And then, as I mentioned before, I need to see whether it can negotiate the first radius curve at the top of the hill. Let's give it a go. So that's not bad, we've made a good start. The loco is certainly a lot of fun, and the sound adds a whole new aspect to the modelling. In particular, I'm pleased that it can pull no less than 6 coaches. In fact, I haven't tried 7, but it can certainly pull 6 coaches up the incline, and also round that first radius curve that I've got at the end of my layout. So I'm really pleased about that. Hopefully you'll join me next time. I'm going to see if I can get the loco set up on iTrain, and I'll be running through what you need to do to calibrate it, and see if I can also get it working with my infrared detectors. So join me then.